Hello, my name's Tony from Woodrave.com, and I'm going to show you today our MFT template cutting jig. So basically it's a guide that goes on the bottom of your router, and then using pegboard you can set up a table for your new top for your MFT or make custom tops, slabs, whatever. So I'm going to show you the parts that come with the kit and essentially how you want to lay out your table when you're going to build one, and we'll go from there. Okay, every kit you get will come with a set of instructions. You're going to get your template. We also include a piece of pegboard to go with it, so you can bring it to your local supplier to match up to what type you would like to get. And then you'll also get 2 screws. These are for the Festool OF 1400, so we include those screws for that. If you're setting this up, because this will actually fit the OF 1400, we have 2 screw holes for that, and it will also fit the Porter cable base routers, and there's 3 holes for that. And there's a bottom plate, you can take that off and then use the pre-existing screws to go into the points for the Porter cable. Okay, so essentially that's what's going to come in your kit, and then we'll show you how to mount it. Okay, for mounting onto the Festool OF 1400, you're going to need your plate, 2 screws that come with it. They may be black or silver. When you receive the kit, they may vary. And you'll need a 5mm Allen wrench. So on the plate here, you'll see there's a variety of holes. The one furthest out and the one directly straight across from it are going to be your Festool OF 1400 mount holes. So you're going to essentially look at it, and one hole is further off here to the side, and one's a little bit further in. The hole that is furthest out on the template is the one that matches up with this hole that's furthest out on the plate, which will help center your borehole bit. If you do it the other way, it'll be offset and it'll be incorrect. So you want to make sure that that hole is centered in the spot. Now what you're going to do is you just place your screws in. They may be a little bit on the tight side, just push them in. It helps in reducing any play in the plate. So what I'm going to do is essentially just line it up, take my Allen head key wrench, and tighten up my screws. So at this point, snug those down, not too tight, you don't have to over force them. Now my router is ready to go, and from here I can go ahead, put in my bit for boring, and you're going to want to use a 20mm boring bit or a 3/4 inch hole boring bit. I use a Bosch, and then there's also a Festool, and they're both really great bits. So that's essentially how you install the plate. Next I'll go over how to set up your template to bore the holes. Okay, here I have a piece of pegboard that I've already pre-drilled my holes into for laying out the table I'm going to do this. I made this one for a large table. I can essentially bore out 2 rows of holes on my table. I'll have this clamped down. I can bore those out, and essentially I would have my router in place, and then I can plunge each one, move to the next one, and having it pre-drilled in your template, it's easy to line up where your next hole is going to be. So then I can kind of go through and move through. Now one thing you want to do is make sure that every hole you go to, you always keep the router in the same direction. You never want to rotate it into the next row or whatever. You always want to move this way and then over and this way, and always keep that direction the same direction with your router. Reason for that is if there is any bit off in the spindle of your router, or if even the plate is a little bit off, what that will do is it'll ensure that everything is still aligned, because that offset is going to be in the exact same direction each time, therefore transferring to the next hole set. So that way all your holes stay in alignment. If you rotate it and there's a slight bit off, well, then it's going to move it in the opposite direction. And then what you're going to do is create a situation where your holes are not perfectly aligned. So always keep your router in the same direction when you're drilling a table. Never rotate it. Another point here is when you are making your template, do this in advance. It makes it much easier. Also, whenever you're cutting holes for whether it be your template or your tabletop, make sure you put something underneath so that you're not boring through a surface you don't want to bore through yet. So, have a piece of scrap material. I usually have some 1/4 inch MDF laying around. I'll put that up underneath, so when I go to bore out my template and move through, I'm just barely cutting into that second piece. So that way I'm getting nice clean cuts, and also I'm not cutting into my work surface underneath and putting holes where I don't want them. Okay, on this jig, the way I've got it set up, essentially I've only got it about 12 inches wide at most, and I drilled 2 sets of holes. So that way what I can do is once I have my second set of holes, I can move forward just taking a couple of perf dogs and dropping them in. Now I'm locked in place and I can make my next row, plunge those, and then move forward to the next one, drop my perf dogs in, and then make sure that I keep completely aligned. So everything stays in perfect alignment all the way across, and then that way you move from one to the other. So you don't need to make a template as large as your table. In the case of my MFT table, I did make one the size of my table, so that way I can just lay it up on my cut sheet, clamp it, and go through the entire table because it's not that big. But if you're doing a large table, say a 4x8 table or something just under that, then this is a great way to go, because then this template doesn't take up a lot of space.